All right, of course, that was just visuals there from the funeral that took place a little bit earlier on of the internationally acclaimed Pastor Ray McCauley. It was taking place at the Rema Bible Church, of course, a church that he founded, Blaine, in 1979. I think at the moment it stands at around 45,000 congregants.
Yeah, the voice you heard was Griselda Lewis. We'll go back to her in a short while, but maybe we can draw commonalities among the two. Both served, both were influential, and both, by many accounts, love this country. And that's a blessing in that, because it adds to the issue of goodness and doing good for the betterment of this country. I'm sorry.
And looking at particularly on Pastor Ray, some of the very influential politicians going there to also attest to how he had been to them in terms of giving that kind of advice, even in the political space. So that clearly talks about what you are saying, being patriotic at the same time and trying to serve your people.
All right, so I think let's go back then to the proceedings there in Limpopo. Of course, Samkele Maseko is one of our senior reporters on the ground. Samkele, just talk to us about what you're seeing and what you're hearing now in as far as the program is concerned. Of course, we heard a little bit earlier on from President Cyril Ramaphosa delivering his eulogy.
Indeed, the president delivered the eulogy, essentially saying that Tito Mboweni understood the assignment at hand when given tasks to perform, whether in government, whether in the private sector. You heard President Ramaphosa saying that he knew central governors around the world on a first-name basis. I am going to bring in Mboweni Mokonyane, who is the ANC's Deputy Secretary General. Mrs. Mokonyane, just the essence of the life of Tito Mboweni as espoused by the eulogy delivered by the President, saying that he understood the task at hand, he understood the assignment.
He understood the assignment pre-democracy, sacrificing his life, going into exile, being a student activist, representing the country globally, and contributing in shaping the organization's policies, implementing such policies, and beyond that also remaining rooted amongst his community. Something that many of us in the NEC, in the membership of the NC, has to actually learn. Remain rooted and connected amongst your people.
When you look at Tito Mboweni's life, he remained rooted amongst his people within this particular area. In your own ANC documents, in the diagnostic report of the Secretary General in 2017 in Nasrec, it spoke about a leadership deficiency and a leadership gap between the leaders and the people.
That's exactly why out of the 55th National Conference, we resolved about renewal and also reconnection. And as you have seen now, we have all committed to do a lot of sectoral work and deploying our officials, not only leaving it to ordinary members at a lower level to be involved in that, because that has been a deficit that the ANC has had, because we've been preoccupied by being in power. But in this program now, we've been busy going to our own structures. We're going to the NEC meeting where we are also going to assign every NEC, every leader, a responsibility of going back to his or her branch, his or her region, identifying not less than 5 sectors that you have to interact with and come back and account.
When you listened to the analogy provided by your struggle stalwart, former NEC member, former Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy in the country, Advocate Ngwakora Matlodi, of the black spiders, male and female, when they are mating, what did you make of that particular analogy?
For me, that analogy, I take ourselves as the female spider. We have a history of hugging the hyena, we have a history of riding the crocodile, and we come out victoriously. That's why we're 112 years old. We never go into a space with no understanding of the risks. And hence, even under these conditions, we remain committed to rescue the African National Congress and rebuild it, so that then the black spider can live beyond today and beyond the mating period.
But it seemed as if many funerals of political stalwarts, former ministers, turn into political funerals. You look at the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada, what took place at those particular funerals, none of those scenes here, but you could get a sense from the analogies being made that maybe people are saying what people loved so much, who led it, are the ones who actually ate it and crumbled it to the ground.
You know what is unfortunate? It is said by people who have led the ANC, and only in this term, in this new term of the 55th National Conference, they are not leaders, but they remain members of the ANC. And we've taken a conscious decision, and I'm sure you have seen the approach of the newly elected NEC. We don't use funerals, because here we've come to pledge solidarity, to convey our messages and celebrate the life. So we refuse to be dragged into such. But as I've said, it is said by people that we're looking up to who must actually help to renew this movement.
When you look at the remains of Tito Mboweni laying there in state at this point in time, draped in a South African flag, knowing that the red represents the blood that was lost, the green represents the hopes and the aspirations of South Africans, the greenery of South Africa's vegetation, what would be his biggest wish that you as the ANC would say to him that you will achieve in the interim, midterm and long term, looking at the deplorable conditions that people are in and the state that the party is in as well?
All those colors are very important. The unity of the African people is very important. There's a lot of polarization in terms of political parties. There are many things that are of a tribal and regional nature that we have to rescue, but we must also celebrate that we have a stable country, a stable nation. You do have also green that represents the land of our country that we continue to be committed towards, as well as the issue of the economy, the blood that our people sacrificed. We need to deal with that. The struggle continues, because now we're seeing a lot of killings of ordinary people, mass shootings and stuff. This flag for me and for the ANC demonstrates that we are a nation in progress and a nation that is still have to realize what those five colors stands for.
Earlier on at the grandstand, Tito Mboweni tried during the elections to mobilize the white Afrikaner community to vote for the ANC here in Magabeskloof. I saw 3 or 4 white individuals, citizens, residents of this area, sitting on those grandstands, donning ANC regalia with Tito Mboweni's face. What does that say about the man and the multiracial character of the African National Congress that he wanted to go back to?
Earlier in the morning, when I went to the church service, we went for a coffee and a cup of tea in a small outlet owned by a couple, white Afrikaner couple, and we just stopped there, and they were also excited. In fact, they were looking for ANC t-shirts. And I think this is one legacy that we must preserve, of coming back to this community, because out of his stature and his pronouncements, he has actually made this community, black and white, to identify with the African National Congress as the Duke of Magabeskloof.
Thank you very much. That is Nomvula Mokonyane, the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress, remembering the life and times of Tito Mboweni and the role he particularly played as the Duke of Magabeskloof. As you can see, the residents of this particular area of Mopane District Municipality, Greater Tanin Municipality, they have come out in their numbers in order to send off Tito Titus Mboweni to his final resting place. As you can see now, the South African Police Service going to usher the remains of Tito Mboweni to the cortege that will ultimately now take him to his final resting place in Sasekane, a village where our colleague Makgetla will be accompanying the procession until it gets to the cemetery.
Lives lived for the people of South Africa, but sharing a common good, a common understanding to make this country a better place in a lot of respects. Mzondile Mbeje, the president talking about Tito Mboweni as a champion of economic transformation as well as fiscal discipline. But we do know, stemming from that interview that Sophie Mokoena did with former President Mbeki, that he took up the reins of finance minister a bit reluctantly. The explanation that Mr. Mbeki gave was that his recollection of government was back in 94, that era, right? He didn't necessarily know the new cabinet. So the capacity to work together as a collective, he was uncertain about, but he still took up the job.
You know, when you had people in the Congress movement or in the ANC in general, so they would basically say, so if you are a dedicated and committed member of the ANC, so you are assigned responsibilities. So once you are assigned those responsibilities, so you can't say no. So you are called upon to serve. If then you took up arms or you decided to join the struggle for the betterment of this country, so you knew that there will be various responsibilities that will be assigned to you. So you can't then pick and choose. So if you did that, it basically means, so you were not that committed. Here is someone who hadn't been in government for quite some time, and then they came, as the president confirmed, to say, I went knocking on his door. Reluctantly, because he thought he was done, but because he knew what is it that this country needed to achieve, he knew that he had to accept that responsibility, especially Blaine and Unati, because we were in a situation where the finance minister had left, and we needed to hear the budget that was to be delivered in a few days. So if then your ultimate objective is to serve this nation without thinking for yourself first. So it was logical that, I mean, he took it as I think the former president, Sophie, clearly articulated, so the kind of a person that Tito Mboweni was.
I just want to take this moment to explain there, of course, to our viewers what they're seeing in terms of those split screen, of course, that is the SAPS engaging there, of course, with the ceremonial honors, and this of course is in accordance with the special official funeral category 2, as well as of course in the McCauley funeral it is a provincial one too, but these are just ceremonial undertakings then by the SAPS before we start to see the family members departing to the ceremony. Of course, this will then conclude part 1 of this particular funeral, where part 2, of course, will unfold with the immediate family and the president and some invited guests at the cemetery.
Well, I just want to weigh in on what Mzwai said. And Blaine, when you ask a question, he agreed reluctantly so. It was after consultation where he was persuaded to go and assist. And you could understand, you know, why he was reluctant. As the president pointed out to the state capture, Treasury was in a very difficult position. And I think having been a governor of the Reserve Bank and having worked with Treasury, with the finance minister, Trevor, he knew what a professional treasury meant. Now, during that state capture, when there was a scramble for treasury, it was shaken as well. So I think he knew that it was going to be very difficult to build overnight. But after he was persuaded by the former president, because former president was arguing that go and assist to rebuild, just go there in the interest of the nation so that we can restore the resources of the country and therefore we can deliver for the people. That is why he did agree then to say, okay, let me go. And like the president himself said, that it was because we wanted someone to go and help us, because we know that he had built institutions. When you talk about him at Labour, NEDLAC, and then him changing the Reserve Bank, making it public what they were doing. So you needed someone to go and again strengthen the institutions of democracy, like your treasury, which is very central in relation to the resources of the country. Because if you don't have a strong purse, you are not going to deliver anything.
And bring a sense of calm, isn't it, Mzwai?
No, certainly. because of the kind of a role he was playing. In fact, there's just something I also need to just highlight. I know that our viewers do know about it. When someone is granted a special official funeral, it's say category 2, where you see basically the ceremonials from the police. So that is an acknowledgement to an outstanding individual who has contributed immensely. The reason why he was called upon, because of the kind of the contribution he has made. That's why then the president, depending on the kind of role that you have played, then would accord you those honors. And then, of course, if it's category 2, and then it will be police ceremonial versus maybe category 1. So it basically talks to the kind of the role and the depth of the men that we're speaking to today.
And I mean, it just reminds me again, of course, of the initial statement that was sent by Cyril Ramaphosa, and something that we haven't discussed, today, was that initial shock of just, hearing of this particular loss for the country. I mean, in that statement, the presidency issued saying that given his sense of vitality and energetic and affable engagement with fellow South Africans, Dr. Mboweni's passing at 65 comes as a shock. Those are words that were echoed by Thabo Mbeki himself, the former president. They were also echoed by the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, who went to the family home not too long ago to say that, it was not his time necessarily, but that, of course, he leaves a lasting legacy that will hopefully be taken forward.
All right, let's go back to Limpopo. Samkele Maseko is watching proceedings. The coffin now being put in the hearse, en route to the cemetery. Samkele, what are you saying?
Indeed, Blaine, the Tito Mboweni's remains are now being put into the hearse. They are now going to move to the cemetery at Sasekane village, where he will be laid to rest. The president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, will also be departing shortly. As the burial, we have said that it is only the family that will only be going to the cemetery and not the political leaders. So political leaders and those whom are here for the official funeral of Tito Mboweni will now go to where they will have lunch and ultimately go towards their destinations. But the funeral service where he will be laid to rest will only be the family. They are with the Premier of Limpopo, Mboweni Premier, just the life and times of Tito Mboweni. As the Premier of the province, you worked extensively with him. Campaigns in the campaign season, what would you remember the most about Tito, and particularly from the eulogy, drawing from it of what the president has said?
His brutality with the truth, his passion when it comes to service delivery, his understanding of the real social distance. You'll remember we thought social distance is during COVID, where you must stay apart, but to him social distance was the fact that as a leader you cannot be up there and not be with the people that you are leading. For you to be able to understand what your people are going through, it's when you do not reside in certain where you have got better services, but for you to come and stay with the people of Sasekan and understand their struggles of water, go through their struggles, and therefore you'll be able to fast track service delivery. So I'll remember him that he didn't mix his word. He was not nice. There are times wherein we will box each other, especially when it comes to service delivery. I still remember as an MEC for Health when he lost his sister who was admitted in Maputo Malaji. He was very hard on us, and honestly so. I was sharing with you the Litawa story. Because of time, I couldn't go on. 3 months later, after I've gone to the hospital, I intervened. I had to do unpopular decision, remove the then CEO, replace them with young people. 3 months later, he visited after 100 days, and he found a complete change in environment. He still gave me feedback. You go to Litawa today, you find they've got state-of-the-art radiology equipment, which you usually find in tertiary hospital, because I brought in young energy, and he would give you that feedback and appreciate
said, you know, the stories of coat holes. Right now, I had not yet earned a title of being his favorite premier because I still needed to fix the roads in the province. I still needed to make sure people get access to water. I still not need to improve education. So he was saying, because in his congratulating my appointment, he was saying the energy that you put while you were in health and not being afraid to be controversial sometimes and getting attacked can help you if you bring it running the province. Just duplicate it in all your 10 departments. So I would definitely, we have lost. And we were saying earlier on, when I met the team just before his passing, which were preparing investment conference. If we give you a draft conference, he was one of our main speakers. And you can understand because we wanted to tap from his knowledge of understanding what needs to be done in this province for the sake of economic growth and development.
Thank you very much, Premier Popi Ramachuba, the Premier of the province of Limpopo, remembering the life and times of Tito Mboweni. The cortege plane is now leaving this particular Ankoa Stadium, where they will now officially go to the cemetery where the former Minister of Finance, the former Minister of Labour, the former Governor of the Reserve Bank, Tito Mboweni, will be laid to rest. Other political dignitaries are now also leaving. This particular convoy is usually used by one of the former presidents or deputy presidents of the country. As we had seen, former President Thabo Mbeki was also in attendance, and also former Deputy President David Mabuza. In fact, this particular convoy is a convoy of former Deputy President David Mabuza. As you can see, he is also now preparing to leave this particular cemetery, this particular stadium where the service was taking place, because the family has decided that at the cemetery it will be a private affair and no political dignitaries will be there. As you can see, the former Deputy President David Mabuza is now also leaving this stadium. As you can also see, Maria Ramos, Trevor Manuel, they had also all attended. They are also leaving. All political dignitaries at this point in time are leaving. As Mzwandi Lembeche was reflecting that Tito Mboweni understood the task, just looking at the reflections of David Mabuza on Tito Mboweni, it said that he used to visit him a lot at his residence in Cape Town when he was the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. They would reflect on a number of political issues of the day, on each other's shoes, and also reflect on contemporary politics. I also heard the analogy that was given by Ngwako Ramatlodi, a friend of Tito Mboweni, of the black spiders there, plane, also looking at saying that Tito